Have you ever felt that strange, unsettling moment when someone's words just don't sit right with you? When their stories have a hidden weight, a subtle pull, and yet you can't quite articulate why? That tiny, almost imperceptible feeling is your intuition screaming the truth, but most people dismiss it. Today, I want to pull back the veil and show you something almost no one teaches: the 5 habits liars use to manipulate you, and how you can adopt the ancient wisdom of Stoicism to become completely unshakable in the face of deception. Imagine walking into a room and seeing through lies before a word is spoken, not because you are paranoid or suspicious, but because your mind is disciplined, calm, and attuned to reality itself. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, faced a world where betrayal was routine. Political rivals, generals, and even trusted advisors attempted to manipulate him daily. Yet in Meditations, he demonstrates a mind so disciplined that no deceit could penetrate it. He writes about controlling one's impressions, distinguishing between what is within our power and what is not, and maintaining serenity regardless of external chaos. And this is precisely the mindset that will shield you from manipulation. But here's the thing: the habits I'm about to reveal aren't always obvious. They are subtle, woven into everyday interactions, almost invisible to the untrained eye. You may have already encountered them: friends asking questions that feel oddly loaded, colleagues repeating the same point over and over, strangers or even loved ones pushing your buttons without you realizing it. And here's the key: these habits are not random. They are psychological tools designed to make you act against your own values, to provoke emotions you don't need, and to steer you into decisions that benefit the liar at your expense. In modern life, we are surrounded by these manipulations. Social media influencers, workplace dynamics, even our family interactions can carry the same subtle manipulative patterns. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoics, reminded us that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That principle is the weapon that turns manipulation into opportunity. You don't have to control others, you only need mastery over your own mind. In this video, you'll learn not only to spot these manipulative behaviors, but also to respond with clarity, composure, and Stoic strength, turning every attempt at deceit into a chance to reinforce your inner discipline. And before we break down the first habit, let me set the stage with a story. Imagine a colleague at work who constantly asks you to do favors, always framing it as helping the team. Yet every favor subtly undermines your time, your authority, or your confidence. They smile, laugh, and insist it's for your benefit, but there's a hidden agenda. Most people would obey, rationalize, or even feel guilty, unaware that this is the first type of manipulative habit in action. Seneca wrote extensively about the dangers of allowing others to control your peace of mind, warning that no man is free who is not master of himself. That's the core principle here. The moment you recognize manipulation, you reclaim control. And the story doesn't end there. What makes these habits so dangerous is that liars often combine them. One might ask a seemingly innocent question, then repeat it multiple times to unsettle you, and finally frame the conversation so that you feel guilty for doubting them. These patterns are not random. They are consistent, measurable, and historically documented in human behavior. By the end of this video, you won't just recognize these patterns, you'll predict them, deflect them, and even use the interaction as a personal training ground for self-mastery, just as a Stoic would. But here's the catch: most people stop at awareness. They see manipulation but still react emotionally, allowing anger, anxiety, or guilt to cloud their judgment. That's why in this video, I'll share a step-by-step method inspired by Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, showing you how to neutralize the emotional pull of deception and respond with a clarity that feels almost impossible in today's world. And here's a small teaser for later. By the 5th habit, I'll reveal a technique so powerful that it transformed the act of being manipulated into a profound opportunity for inner growth, resilience, and the kind of discipline that makes you untouchable in every interaction. So, if you've ever felt confused, frustrated, or secretly betrayed by someone's words, stick with me. Because what you're about to learn will permanently change how you navigate conversations, relationships, and even your own instincts. By the time we're finished, you'll not only recognize manipulation, but you'll meet it with calm, unshakable composure, the kind that liars ineffective without ever needing confrontation. And perhaps the most surprising lesson: these habits reveal as much about your own mind as they do about theirs. Recognizing manipulation isn't just defensive, it's transformative. It teaches self-awareness, patience, and a discipline of thought that even the great Stoics prized above wealth, status, and power. So let's dive in. Uncover the first habit and start building the kind of unshakable mental fortress that makes deception powerless against you. And I promise, by the end, you'll see interactions you once thought confusing or frustrating in an entirely new light, equipped with a mental clarity that most people spend a lifetime searching for, but rarely achieve.
Let's begin with the first habit, one that almost everyone falls victim to because it feels so natural, almost harmless. The habit of over-explaining or oversharing to create confusion and emotional leverage. Think about the last time someone gave you a long, winding explanation for something that should have been simple. Maybe a coworker justified why a project failed, or a friend recounted every minor detail of an argument they had with someone else. At first, it seems innocent, even trustworthy, but the goal is subtle manipulation. When someone overwhelms your mind with details, your focus fragments and your judgment blurs. This is classic psychological manipulation, and the Stoics anticipated this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of focusing on what is essential and letting go of distractions. In his daily reflections, he reminds himself to strip away the unnecessary noise of life, to see things clearly for what they are, and to never allow another's words to disturb his inner peace. Here's a real-world example. Imagine a manager who constantly explains why deadlines are slipping, listing a dozen excuses, blaming multiple people, and insisting you see the bigger picture. Your natural reaction might be confusion, guilt, or even a sense of obligation to act even when it's not your responsibility. A Stoic would recognize this as a strategy to provoke an emotional reaction, not a rational solution. Epictetus would advise, don't let your mind be led by external appearances or the opinions of others. Anchor it in reason, not in reaction. The actionable lesson here is simple but profound. Listen for the core fact and ignore the unnecessary details. Ask yourself, what is the truth in this situation and what is just noise designed to unsettle me? By consistently practicing this, you train your mind to see through confusion and maintain clarity under pressure, even when someone is deliberately trying to blur reality. But the lesson doesn't stop there. Once you recognize the habit, you can also use it to your advantage. The next time someone begins over-explaining, pause, observe, let them spill without interrupting, and notice how their pattern often reveals more about their intentions than their words do. This transforms what feels like manipulation into a training ground for your patience, focus, and self-control. Now, the second habit is even more insidious because it targets a deeper, almost primal human emotion, guilt tripping or framing questions to induce shame or obligation. Liars often craft questions designed to make you feel responsible for their feelings or outcomes. Have you ever had someone ask, "Don't you care about a friendship?" Or, "Wouldn't you want to help me if you really valued me?" On the surface, these questions seem reasonable, even caring, but they are emotional traps. They exploit your innate desire to be moral, loyal, and socially accepted. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca, in his letters, warns against allowing the opinions or manipulations of others to dictate your inner peace, emphasizing that true virtue is maintained only when it is self-directed, not reactionary. Imagine a friend repeatedly asking favors and framing each request as a moral test of your loyalty. Most people, fearing guilt or social rejection, comply automatically. A Stoic response would be different. You recognize the question as a tool, not a truth. You acknowledge your own values first. Am I acting according to virtue, reason, and what I can control? Then, and only then, do you respond. The actionable step here is to pause before responding to emotionally loaded questions, separate your judgment from the manipulator's framing, and decide according to reason and principle, not guilt. This is exactly what Epictetus meant when he said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. Control your mind, and they have no power." In modern life, guilt tripping appears everywhere, from friends who borrow repeatedly without returning favors, to colleagues who frame criticism as helpful advice, to partners who manipulate through emotional appeals. Recognizing the pattern is step one. Step two is applying the Stoic principle of control. Your emotions, your reactions, your decisions. The manipulator's power dissolves the moment you no longer react out of obligation or fear. And here's a critical open loop. These first two habits are often combined by liars in sophisticated ways, creating a cycle of confusion and emotional pressure that can feel inescapable. Most people never notice because they respond instinctively. But in the next part, we'll uncover a third habit that works in tandem with these first two, one that targets your perception of truth itself and can make even the most disciplined mind question reality. And when we get to that, I'll reveal a Stoic technique so powerful, it allows you to step outside the conversation entirely, observing it with calm objectivity while the manipulator unwittingly reveals their own weaknesses. By the end of this video, you'll see these interactions not as traps, but opportunities, each one a lesson in patience, clarity, and emotional resilience. You'll learn how to turn confusion into focus, guilt into discernment, and manipulation into personal mastery. These first two habits might seem small or even trivial, but they're the foundation of almost all manipulative tactics. And here's a final tease for this section. Recognizing them is just the beginning. The next habits dig even deeper into the psychology of deceit, revealing patterns that are shockingly common in every area of life, from social media and dating to professional environments and family dynamics. The real power comes when you not only spot them, but respond in a way that strengthens your discipline, protects your peace, and even transforms the encounter into a stoic exercise in self-control and inner growth. Imagine turning every lie, every manipulative attempt into a mirror for your own virtue, a test that leaves you stronger and unshakable. That is not theory, it is practice, stoic practice, that anyone can start today.
Now that you understand how over-explaining and guilt-tripping work, let's move deeper into manipulation with the third habit, the repetition trap. This is deceptively simple, yet incredibly effective. Liars will repeat a statement, a question, or an accusation multiple times, subtly embedding it into your mind. Have you ever noticed how, when someone repeats a point over and over, you start questioning your own memory, your own judgment? Suddenly, what you were certain about feels uncertain, and you feel compelled to respond, defend, or even apologize. This is not a coincidence, it's a psychological tactic designed to create doubt and anxiety, and it has been in human interaction for centuries. Epictetus warned about this when he said, "Don't be carried away by appearances or the opinions of others. Anchor your mind in reason, and nothing external can shake you." Repetition works because humans are wired to assume repeated statements must have some truth, even subconsciously. Social media exploits this daily with algorithms repeating the same narratives until they feel inevitable. In personal interactions, it appears as someone constantly questioning your choices, restating their version of events, or subtly implying you are mistaken without ever providing evidence. Imagine a colleague who keeps asking, "Are you sure you handled that correctly?" Every single time a minor task is completed. Each repetition chips away at your confidence, not because you did anything wrong, but because your attention is pulled into doubt. The Stoic approach is powerful here. Notice the repetition, observe it without internalizing it, and anchor yourself in facts, not their insistence. Marcus Aurelius would advise to view the repeated statements as mere sounds, external events beyond your control, which hold no power unless you grant it. The actionable step is to pause, reflect, and respond only to what is true and relevant, rather than reacting to the emotional pressure of repetition. By doing this, what once felt like manipulation becomes a practice in patience, clarity, and discernment. The fourth habit is one of the most cunning, creating false dilemmas or framing choices to corner you emotionally. Liars often present situations in a way that makes you feel trapped. Either you comply, or you are painted as unreasonable, uncaring, or morally deficient. You might hear, "If you really cared, you'd agree," or "It's either this way or complete failure." This manipulative pattern preys on the human need for certainty and belonging, forcing decisions that are emotional, not rationally driven. Seneca's letters to Lucilius warn about giving in to external pressures, reminding us that freedom comes from mastering one's own choices and not surrendering to the illusions imposed by others. To see this in modern life, imagine negotiating at work. A colleague frames every proposal as urgent and implies that rejecting it makes you unreliable. At home, a partner might say, "If you loved me, you'd do this for me." Both are tactics of emotional coercion, false dilemmas designed to bend your will. The Stoic response is to recognize the illusion, reclaim your agency, and decide according to reason, not obligation or fear. Marcus Aurelius emphasized seeing things for what they are, not as they are framed by others. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. This habit is particularly dangerous because it feels personal. It attacks your integrity, values, and sense of morality. The key is to detach emotionally, assess the reality behind the framing, and choose your action based on principle, not manipulation. Practically, this could mean pausing, reframing the question, or calmly stating your position without defensiveness. For example, instead of reacting to, "If you really cared, you'd help me now," you could respond, "I care, and I'm considering the best way to address this situation without compromising my responsibilities." By doing this, what once felt like manipulation becomes a practice in patience, clarity, and discernment. And here's the open loop. These 4 habits, over-explaining, guilt-tripping, repetition, and false dilemmas, are often combined by skilled manipulators. They create layers of emotional pressure designed to confuse, destabilize, and control. But here's the remarkable Stoic insight. Every interaction is a training ground for mastery. Each attempt at manipulation is an opportunity to practice patience, clarity, and emotional discipline. By recognizing these habits, responding with reason, and observing without reacting, you turn deception into personal growth. And coming up next is the 5th habit, which is the most subtle and dangerous of all. It doesn't rely on obvious lies, repetition, or guilt. It manipulates your perception of truth itself. This final habit, when mastered with Stoic wisdom, can completely neutralize manipulation and transform it into a profound lesson in self-control and resilience. Stick with me, because when we break down this last habit, I'll also reveal a Stoic method so powerful that it not only protects you from deceit, but turns any attempt at manipulation into a mirror of your own virtue, focus, and emotional mastery. By the end of this video, the confusion, frustration, and doubt you felt in manipulative situations will transform into clarity, control, and confidence, a level of inner strength that most people spend a lifetime chasing but rarely attain. Now we arrive at the 5th habit, and this one is perhaps the most insidious of all. The habit of twisting your perception of reality itself, subtly shaping what you think, feel, and even remember. Unlike over-explaining, guilt-tripping, repetition, or false dilemmas, this habit doesn't hit you directly. It creeps into your consciousness, creating a fog where you start doubting your own judgment, questioning whether your feelings are valid, or wondering if you're overreacting. Have you ever left a conversation feeling disoriented, like maybe you misremembered what happened, or questioning if your reaction was unreasonable? That is manipulation at its peak. Liars using subtle psychological influence to bend your sense of reality. Modern examples are everywhere. A coworker might insist you said something you didn't. A friend may reframe events to cast themselves as the victim. Or social media narratives can twist facts so effectively that even the most critical thinkers begin to question their own perception. And yet, the Stoics provide the perfect armor against this. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that reality is objective and that our impressions are under our control. He writes, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. Remove your judgment and you are free." The actionable lesson is profound. External attempts to distort reality only work if you allow them to dictate your inner narrative. When someone tries to manipulate your perception, your task is to pause, step back, and ask yourself, what do I know for certain? What is within my control? What is just someone else's interpretation of events? This simple mental separation transforms confusion into clarity, doubt into discernment, and manipulation into a mirror for self-mastery. Let's consider a modern scenario. A coworker repeatedly claims you agreed to something you never did. Most people, caught in the moment, begin to rationalize, second-guess themselves, and even apologize unnecessarily. A Stoic, however, acknowledges the fact, maintains composure, and responds only to the truth as they perceive it, while detaching from the manipulator's agenda. Epictetus would advise, don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do. Then your life will flow well. By anchoring yourself in what is true and within your control, you eliminate the manipulator's power completely. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When you fully understand this habit, you realize that manipulation is not inherently harmful. In fact, it becomes a tool, a challenge for you to practice Stoic virtues like patience, rationality, and emotional resilience. Imagine turning every attempt at deceit into a personal exercise in calm observation, detachment, and clarity of thought. Each interaction becomes a classroom, each manipulative tactic a lesson in mastering your mind. And here's a critical open loop. While most people spend their lives reacting to manipulation, feeling guilt, frustration, or confusion, Stoics teach us that true freedom comes from inner mastery, not from controlling others. By mastering the fifth habit, you not only protect yourself from deception, but cultivate an unshakable mindset, the kind that makes external chaos irrelevant. And this is precisely what makes Stoicism so timeless. It doesn't promise to change the world around you. It empowers you to navigate it with wisdom, strength, and serenity, so that no one can disturb your peace, manipulate your mind, or sway your judgment without your consent. Before we move to the conclusion, here's a final insight that ties all 5 habits together. The power of a manipulator lies not in their words, but in how you react. By recognizing these habits, over-explaining, guilt-tripping, repetition, false dilemmas, and perception twisting, you gain the ability to respond rather than react to every attempt at influence. The next step is the practical application, using your awareness to maintain clarity, cultivate patience, and turn every interaction into a training ground for Stoic discipline. And here's a teaser for the conclusion. I'll reveal a final mental exercise inspired by Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus that ensures these manipulative tactics not only fail to impact you, but actively strengthen your resilience, focus, and emotional mastery, making you untouchable in every conversation, relationship, and challenge you face. Stick around, because the transformation is both profound and immediately applicable in real life. And it's the kind of insight that will fundamentally change the way you engage with people forever. Now that you've seen all 5 manipulative habits, over-explaining, guilt-tripping, repetition, false dilemmas, and perception twisting, you might be feeling a mix of clarity and unease. That's natural. The truth about manipulation is uncomfortable, but the Stoics remind us that discomfort is the gateway to growth. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Every manipulative tactic you've encountered in this video is not merely a threat. It is an opportunity, a chance to train your mind, sharpen your judgment, and fortify your emotional resilience. Imagine walking into any interaction, whether personal, professional, or even casual, with a mind that is calm, clear, and unshakable. Picture yourself listening without distraction, responding without guilt, and making decisions grounded in reason rather than fear or obligation. This is not some abstract ideal. It is a skill, a practice, a habit cultivated through awareness, reflection, and disciplined response. Let's break it down practically. First, recognize these habits as they occur. Awareness is your first shield. Once you notice over-explaining, repeated questions, or subtle guilt, you immediately create space between stimulus and reaction. That gap is where Stoic power resides. Marcus Aurelius teaches that external events are neither good nor bad. They are merely opportunities for virtue. Second, anchor yourself in what is within your control: your thoughts, your actions, your interpretations. You cannot control the liar, their words, or their intent, but you can control your response. Epictetus emphasizes this relentlessly. Mastery of the self is the only true freedom. Third, respond from principle rather than emotion. Pause before replying to any manipulative statement. Ask yourself, is this aligned with my values? Am I reacting out of fear, guilt, or obligation? Or am I acting from reason and integrity? The moment you respond from principle, the manipulator loses all power and you convert potential chaos into calm mastery. Fourth, reframe the encounter as a Stoic exercise. Every attempt at manipulation is a test, an invitation to cultivate patience, clarity, and focus. When someone tries to confuse or coerce you, you see it not as a personal attack, but as a mirror reflecting your inner discipline. Finally, internalize the mindset that no one can disrupt your peace without your consent. This is the essence of unshakable Stoicism. The world will always present challenges, deceit, and attempts to control you. What defines your freedom, strength, and growth is your ability to navigate these forces without losing composure. And here's the transformative insight. Manipulation, when recognized and met with Stoic discipline, becomes fuel for mastery rather than a weapon against you. The more people attempt to deceive, the more opportunities you have to train patience, refine judgment, and strengthen your resolve. Let's revisit a scenario from earlier. A friend repeatedly guilt-tripping you over favors, a colleague twisting facts to create doubt, or a social interaction clouded by repetition and over-explanation. In the past, you may have reacted emotionally, giving away your time, energy, and confidence. Now, armed with these 5 Stoic insights, you observe, assess, and act from clarity. You protect your inner world while responding effectively to the external situation. And here's a final open loop for reflection. These habits are universal. They exist in the workplace, on social media, in romantic relationships, and even within family dynamics. By mastering them, you don't just defend against manipulation, you elevate your entire approach to life. You cultivate a mindset that thrives under pressure, sees truth clearly, and responds with unwavering composure. In essence, you become untouchable, not because the world changes, but because your perception, judgment, and reactions have been refined to Stoic perfection. So start today. Begin noticing the small manipulative patterns, pause before responding, anchor yourself in what is true, and practice deliberate, principled action. Over time, these exercises will reshape not only your interactions, but your character, creating a life of clarity, resilience, and inner peace. Remember Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Let the knowledge of these 5 habits be your guide. Let Stoicism turn every manipulative encounter into a path of growth, mastery, and unshakable freedom. The world will always challenge you, deceive you, and test your resolve. The choice is yours, to be controlled or to stand as a calm, disciplined observer, turning every attempt at manipulation into a lesson in virtue and self-mastery. You now have the tools, the mindset, and the strategies. What you do next defines not just your interactions, but your life itself.